Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Whitey and Wills Sports Show. This is episode number 13. Today is Monday, December 6th, and it is an exciting day for our little show here, as we have a man who sits pretty high atop the pantheon of Effingham High School athletics legend joining us on the show today. I don't really think this guy needs any introduction, but I'll say it anyway. Uwe Blab is here today, joining us for, again, episode number 13. Mike Wilson pulling the strings to get this guy on the show. So thanks very much for joining us, and thanks to Mike for making this happen.
No problem.
I
may have promised Uwe a frozen margarita that was unable to be delivered, so he may bail out here in the middle when he finds out that's not coming in the mail. I don't know.
Hey, trust me, I wasn't expecting
it. So again, I don't really think that Uwe needs a lot of introduction. If you're watching this show at this point, you're a pretty big fan of basketball in our area and probably have been for a while. So you understand what he means to the Effingham High School, the history of the Effingham High School boys basketball program. But we thought it would be nice to have him on and relive the glory days, so to speak, which Mike can obviously, Mike's going to be able to specialize in that, as he was in high school at the same time that Uwe was making headlines across the state. So I'm going to kind of take a back seat today and let Mike drive the conversation a little bit, but you guys go at it and I'll jump in whenever I feel like I can.
First of all, welcome. I enjoyed getting to do a lot of catching up during our class reunion. We seemed to have a pretty good time, and I know you got to catch up with a lot of people, and you did get a new job. We didn't know you had the skills to be an Uber driver, but you did pull that off pretty well, so that worked out pretty well. That was good.
Yeah, you're right. I did do some driving around, Mr. Brad.
I have to give Brad Mason a shout out. A really good friend of both Uwe and I's, and he did a little shuttling over that weekend, and that was good. First off, I want to say, just ask you, what all's going on right now. I know you've been kind of semi-retired during COVID, working as a consultant, doing some things. Update me on just how things are now, family situation, how everything's going real quick.
Well, it's going pretty good. Like you're saying, I don't have a job at the moment. I didn't have a job during COVID. Since COVID, I shouldn't say since COVID, we still got COVID, but since I got vaccinated, I started looking for the job again, and pretty heavily for a while. Had decent success, but bottom line is, from a personal perspective, I'm getting somewhat bored, and so getting the job is becoming critical for me. Of course, it's Christmas time coming up. That's family time. So, and companies don't typically hire on, just before Christmas. So I'm going to probably pause it somewhat and then pick it back up in the beginning of January.
And it's programming still? Coding? Is that where you're at? Or?
Yeah, I used to code. And since that, I would say the last 15 years I've been managing. It's called projects. Working with those programmers, working with different teams, where they coordinate each other and that kind of stuff.
Okay. Your wife doing well?
Yeah. Otherwise, family's doing good. My wife's doing good. My kid's doing good. My daughter is now 20. Oh, I had to think about that, 28. And, she's got a job. She's doing real well. My son is still at the university, and he's doing good. He's doing real good, actually, with his grades. Pretty proud of him. Of course, that means I'm also proud of my daughter. Don't misunderstand me. But, from a personal perspective, everything is going pretty good.
And how did your daughter's, I know she was trying to get involved in a kind of a professional volleyball program.
Yeah, that's still happening.
Okay, well, good.
Yeah, she's going to fly out at beginning of January, and then they play a tournament with all kinds of girls or females that would like to be professionals. And all the coaches come to this tournament, and they check them out, and then they basically draft them from there for their teams. And of course, my daughter's hoping that she get drafted. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Sure. Now she played one time at Louisville, didn't she? And was she at two different schools?
Yeah, she played at North Carolina State, and then she transferred to Louisville, and she finished and got a degree in Louisville.
Okay, well, good. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Glad everybody's doing well. Question about when, the process, and, I know how, you were on one of the teams there in Germany when the Hearts came over to play. But I heard something at the reunion, and it may have been Brad telling me. So, there may be some mix up in communication, but which I found kind of interesting. But before you came, you were academically an issue in Germany? Brad was telling me that story.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, I had an issue there. Matter of fact, I had to skip a class. Not skip a class. It's the opposite. I had to repeat a class. So, that shows you there that I wasn't doing too well.
I think Mike might be frozen up here.
I think so too. I think Mike is a goner, but I guess I'll finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, in Germany, the schooling system is, I'd have to admit, tougher than in America. For example, one of the classes I didn't do so well was Latin. I mean, who studies Latin in this country? And I mean, Latin is something where you can learn other languages, and that's what happens, that you get behind in school. When I came over to the States, because German schools are a little bit ahead of the American schools, so let's say 12th grade in Germany may be ahead of 12th grade here, maybe at a level that here it's 13th grade, or, you get my drift. Mm-hmm. So when I came over, I basically had classes repeated. And so that helped me. I mean, of course, I had the language barrier at first when I came over, and I studied English in Germany, and I'd studied it already probably since 5th grade. And, I was in 10th grade when I came over, 11th grade when I came over. So that gives you a number of years I had English. But, it's still obviously different when you go to school, for the first time when you come over with a different language.
All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pause our recording for a second. I'm going to see what we can do about getting Mike back on here. He was trying to call me while you were giving that answer there. So I'm going to pause our recording real quick. Folks, we'll be right back and pick this up where we left off. All right, hey, we're back. Mike has changed locales. He's moved to a slightly more secure internet connection, I hope, and we'll pick right up where we left off. Nobody listening at home will know any different, I hope.
Yeah.
Uwe and I have just been killing the time while Mike drove across town to safer quarters. So we got the answer to the question about the difference in academics as far as high school kids go in Germany versus the United States. And so, Mike, I'll let you pick it back up here.
All right. Well,
I'm sure you had a plan.
I did. So, Uwe, when you arrived here, your initial impressions were lots of corn and beans, or how was that different from coming across?
Well, no, it had nothing to do with corns and beans. Trust me, that, I mean, just imagine you're 17 and you go into a foreign country, you don't know your parents, and I'm talking to new parents, you don't know your brother and your sister, you know nobody, it's a different language. And I mean, it's just like, overwhelming. And then we started playing basketball pretty quick. And that, that was more of something that I was used to. But just to give you an idea in regard to, what I was more focused on is I'm sitting in the locker room one time and some guy, and I can't remember who, he says, "See you." And I'm trying to respond. And I'm thinking about saying, "Yeah, when will I see you?" Or, I mean, I had no clue what that meant. And I just took it literally. I could have answered, could have been a smart ass and could have said, "Yeah, I see you too."
Well, and yeah, I can understand it. I mean, you knew English pretty well, but yeah, the slang and some of those things there, sure, that's something you're not taught. So, and you seem to fit in well, obviously with your teammates. And in our class, there was kind of a group of us that would do a lot, and, we would try to, make you feel at home. You said you didn't want to be a smart ass. You never had that problem though in school. You could dish it out as well as you could take it with our group of people that like to do that. So, you fit. I thought you fit in pretty well quickly for someone coming into a new setting like that.
Yeah, I had a good time there. And you're right, I did. Obviously, everybody made an effort, because they knew I'm new and don't know anybody. Obviously, Chucky, my American brother, he made a lot of effort. And so he basically introduced me to all his close friends. And that's how that group started, where that's where, like, you fit in, for example. You were friends of Chucky. And so therefore, it was pretty easy for me to get introduced to the group.
Did you find
go ahead, Dustin.
I'm sorry, Mike. Yeah, I mean, did you find though that when you're coming into that new setting, that the basketball was, I mean, that had to be where you were most comfortable, obviously, and probably where you felt the best was when you were on the court, practicing and playing games, right?
Yeah, it's probably true. Keep in mind, I'd only played for a couple of years prior to that.
Okay.
So the level of basketball and the style of basketball was different. And I'd love to know what the other players thought of me when I first got on the court, stepped onto the court, because, I was 180 pounds, 7'2", meaning skinny as all get out, and couldn't move the greatest, couldn't move as well as the others, still growing into my body, so to speak. So obviously the 7'2"ness helps. There's no question about that. But it took me a little while to get used to the basketball part. But you're right. The basketball part I knew, I was familiar with. And so that was easier to get adjusted to.
And, one thing, Uwe, seeing you, because you guys, we would have last hour PE football players and other athletes, and then you guys would eventually start practice by the end of the day there. But seeing how hard you worked, Coach Temple, I know, kind of worked with you a lot early as well for Coach Maxton, and just the redundancy of the drills they were putting you through. But I'm 7'2". I don't have to work that hard, but quite the contrary. You worked your butt off. And I think that really showed us that you were really trying to become the best you could be, not just, going through the motions.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind my skills weren't that good. So obviously you get, at least I got competitive. And I wanted to, I had a game one time in Germany where it was obviously the other players were talking to each other. They're saying, don't guard him. Don't guard him. Just don't let him come into the lane. Just don't even guard him. He can't shoot. He can't do anything from a little further out. So that, that gives you a kick in the butt, and, where you want to get better at those kinds of things.
Yeah, and that's good. And like I said, you did work, and, then once the game started, you were joining a very, very successful group with very high expectations. You kind of became, the cherry on top of the sundae. Now, a rather large cherry, but yes, you were kind of the point where we thought, hey, we may go to state. It's like, our group of guys from day one, like, hey, once the season started, we got a shot to win this whole thing, because this was a special group and you meshed well with it.
Yeah, I agree. Keep in mind, I had no idea what it meant to go to state.
Sure.
I mean, so even early, definitely early, as the season progressed, I did get an idea, but early, okay, go to state. Yeah, I guess you guys go all the time, so who cares? That kind of mentality.
And everywhere, home games, anywhere we went in the Mid-State Conference or anywhere else, it was a circus to see the team, to see you. It really, every gym we played in was packed all the time and noisy, and we kind of prided ourselves as a group and our students of being there early, being very loud, and it was a lot of fun, but it was crazy.
Yeah, it seemed to be, hindsight being 2020, I see it again. When I was there, I didn't see it because I couldn't hear what the fans were saying. They explained some of that stuff to me later. Sauerkraut Thunder, what does it mean? I had no clue. I didn't know Daryl Dawkins back then. And so, okay, Thunder, it's kind of weird. Yeah, these Americans, they're weird, that kind of stuff.
See, we have to stick that one on my dad, because he said that on the radio that night. It kind of stuck with you. And yeah, that was around the time Daryl Dawkins, and, he was Chocolate Thunder and had broken the backboard. And, sometimes that Wilson humor and wit is awful dry and people buy it. So, you got married to that one. High school career winds down. You're looking at a lot of schools, where to go to school. And it was kind of funny because it was a parade of college coaches in to watch you practice. We would see, almost every big name college coach in the day would be in there watching you, or your junior year watching both, looking at you and Mitch. And that was kind of fun on our part to just, hey, there's Lefty Drizel today, or hey, there's Digger Phelps, there's Coach Knight, and that was interesting.
Well, I have to, unfortunately I think at least I have to correct you. Because when I first got there, I was only a junior.
Mm-hmm.
And during the junior year, maybe the coaches were there to watch Mitch, but not me, because keep in mind, I was there for 1 year and 1 year only. Mm-hmm. Back then, having foreign players over here in this country was not common. So it never even probably crossed these coaches' mind that I could play for them. And so that wasn't that big of a deal, meaning, put it this way, they were definitely not there for me. Now, my senior year, you're right, because at that point, it became clear that I would go to university. I wasn't able to go back to German school at that point, after missing 2 years. So they knew I was going to stay. At that point, my grades had leveled out. My language had leveled out. So they knew I would fit in. And yet, at that point, I was just like a regular American player and recruited accordingly.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, a lot of big names. Now, I'll take a step back first. ESPN has that documentary, The Class That Saved Coach K, and it's the 82 class with Jay Billis and some of those guys. But in that documentary, they mention he was in a lot of trouble because he'd whiffed the year before on his main targets of Bill Whittington, Chris Mullen, and Uwe Blab. And you were mentioned in the documentary. I read the article about it. And did you verbal to Duke at one time, or did you get that far down the process with them?
Yeah, I kind of did. I'm not sure what Coach K heard about, but I had verbalized it to Maxidon, to my American father, to Chuck, and to people that I hung around with, that's where I'd like to go. And so Coach K probably felt pretty sure about me coming there, and then of course I changed my mind after that.
So you change your mind, you go to Indiana, which was great because it gave us a lot shorter drive to come watch you play than going clear to North Carolina, When you get on campus at Indiana, huge campus, defending NCAA champions, you're walking around. Was there a point you thought, wow, I'm kind of making progress with things?
No, not really. And I'm assuming you mean in basketball perspective.
Right.
Practice-wise, yes. There was a skill level increase. I had other big guys playing against all of a sudden, which I didn't have in college, in high school. But from the school perspective, yeah, the size, but it's still, more country atmosphere. I grew up in Munich. I mean, that's big time city. And so it's still that same mentality, the same surroundings and that kind of stuff. I was in a dorm my first year there, and I met people there, had friends there that are still my friends. And so, I acclimated pretty quickly there, I think.
And play-wise, you became a pretty good piece that first year. I know when you and I have talked, Randy Whitman and Ted Kitchell, kind of took you under your wing and turned out to be a pretty good season. As you progress through, or I guess in that first year, was there any point in practice or with some of the preseason stuff that you ever thought, did I make a mistake coming to play for Coach Knight? Did that ever enter your mind? Because you hear people all the time talk about that.
Oh, no, definitely not. Keep in mind, Coach Knight he was a great coach. And that also meant he knew humans, he knew people, especially, guys that age. And, the rule always was, if you're an underclassman, meaning a freshman or a sophomore, you don't get picked on.
Good.
And so that's why you're right. The upperclassmen, they kind of take you under their wing. I give you an example. I had bad hands, couldn't catch much. Fast break in practice. Randy Whitman dribbles down, passes me the ball. I lose it out of bounds. Coach Knight goes ballistic on Randy Whitman. How can you pass him the ball? You got to lay it in yourself. If you miss it, he gets the rebound. But he never touched me at that point. And but it's psychologically, it's such a smart thing to do, because I almost felt worse. I almost wished he had yelled at me, because here he yelled at my buddy because it was my fault. And so, Coach Knight was good in that way. And my first 2 years were therefore not that hard. They were not the typical Bobby Knight, difficulty.
Right. And then we had Marty Simmons on a couple of weeks ago, and Marty mentioned, I think he would have been a freshman your junior year, and he mentioned again how you kind of helped take him under your wing and kind of ease him through the process. Again, you talked about the juniors and seniors taking care of the freshmen and sophomores, and he greatly appreciated that. He said some pretty nice things about you. I was surprised.
Well, yeah, I played with Marty not that long. I think he left after my junior year. But yeah, he was a great guy, and and he actually, the funny thing is, he later became friends with my brother, and my brother still talks about him.
Yeah,
so,
that's what he talked. Yeah, he talked about when he transferred to Evansville to play for Coach Cruz. Olaf eventually came down to Evansville to play, and he said, "I got to play with both of them." And he says, "Yeah," said you were both quality individuals.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You can tell Marty that. Put it that way.
I will let him know. He said in hindsight, he wishes he'd have known you were going to be in town for that class reunion. He said, I'd love to just come down and spend 10 minutes with him, to come down and say hello. So he's now the head coach at Eastern Illinois. They're definitely a work in progress. He came in, and is trying to rebuild the situation. It'll be interesting to see when he gets a little better job to recruit some of his players next year, but I hope he has tremendous success. He's a great guy.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's a great guy.
Can I jump in for a second? You were just talking about Bobby Knight's approach. Do you feel like is there a misconception of the way he deals with kids then? Like, I mean, he's got a reputation obviously as being, a hard ass, and he is, but would you say that people don't understand how he does things in practice to a certain extent? Like people don't understand that, he's not on everybody all the time, or that he's pretty fair about things.
Yeah, he is. I always compared him back then, and even now. Of course, the times were different, so he was able to do that. And I don't know if this happens today still, but the sergeant in the Army, he's got a new class coming in. His responsibility is that his guys survive, that they don't get killed. So he will do everything. And in Bobby Knight's case, is his responsibility is that when we're done with university, we have much more experience in life. We are not getting killed in life, so to speak. And so that was his approach. And of course, you always hear about the sergeant in the Army. He's on his recruits like green on grass, and Bobby Knight did that too. He weeds them out to where he believes that they will be successful. And I think that Bobby Knight, some of the really bad stuff that he did was possibly, in the hopes he could weed them out, and weeding somebody out also shows what character you have, because there were times when he tried to do that with me. I couldn't catch the ball. That one time we had played a real bad game, and possibly my game had been real bad. I don't remember that part, but yeah, he took me out on the court. I mean, he worked me until I dropped, and the assistant coach did, and nobody else was out there. He picked on me, so to speak. And at that point, any player can say, "All right, that's enough for me. I go somewhere else," or they say, "Well, I'm going to stick with this." And the ones that say, "I'm going to stick with it," they learn from that. They get better. They improve more. So I think that was kind of his approach. If a player quits because he's too hard on them, then, well, maybe he didn't want that player anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Now, Uwe, probably your most famous, I don't know, famous is the word, most remembered game at Indiana was your junior year. You guys were in the regional semifinals, maybe I think you were in Atlanta, because we ended up listening to it on spring break, driving through Atlanta, going to spring break. One of your former teammates, Jeff Wolfer, Mike Nieberge. I know Mike came over and visited you with Brad and those guys in Germany. So we listened to that game on the radio, and we're honking our horn, screaming, driving. People thought we were nuts. But when you guys knocked North Carolina off in the tournament, and I watch, there's a rainy Sunday, you can't do much. I'll watch that, pull that up on YouTube again and watch that game. And, your old roommate, gets a lot of credit for guarding Michael Jordan. So that was a fun game.
Yeah, it was a fun game. the game itself, I don't know, fun, but we worked real hard. We had prepped for that game the whole prior week. We basically played a different defensive style that we had never done before, much more press-oriented. And so Bobby Knight, you know, from that perspective, I knew the game was bigger, you know, even before going in. And then in the game, we did real well. And of course, I knew how good North Carolina was at that time. But really, it only hit me afterwards, the magnitude of that victory. And we were in the hotel room, and, you know, I was kind of almost like on cloud nine. I remember that, and I never forget that, because that was a really successful victory, and it made you feel good.
Yeah, and you had a good game. I forget exactly how many you scored, but you played well. You hit a couple of your patented little sky hooks that they'd worked into your game and blocked, you know, some guard from North Carolina named Jordan. You'd swatted one of his shots out into the band, blocked it. And, you know, North Carolina had, I think Sam Perkins was on that team, and you got to know later on Michael Jordan. I think Worthy had graduated, but they had a couple of, you know, All-Americans on that team. And, you know, you guys just outplayed them, and it was awesome. And again, a game that, you know, I think a lot of people go back to and watch on occasion on YouTube.
Yeah, you're probably right. That was one of my more favorable, rememberable games. I definitely agree.
I wanted to ask you something there. You talk about memorable, but by the time you get done playing a college career, you've played so many games in your life. Do very many of them, I mean, do you have great recall of very many of them, or is it kind of more of a blur, you know, like how many individual moments from games or specific games do you know, still think about now, or is it just sort of a mishmash?
It's a mishmash, and you pick and choose. I mean, you don't pick and choose, but you only have certain memories. Obviously, I do have a lot of memories of that particular game, but otherwise, it's like little blurs that you remember, and you don't remember, you know, sometimes you don't, I mean, obviously, some of the games you don't remember at all. You know, I think I do have to admit, that's interesting. It's a change of subject a little bit, but Bobby Knight, he had a memory that was incredible. He could quote, you know, he could tell you things out of games from a couple of years ago. Oh, you remember this one? And no, I don't. And, you know, but his memory for that kind of stuff was really good. And so I think the way I remember it is probably more common. I think most players are like that. You pick and choose what you remember, but no, you don't remember full games.
But people probably come up to you all the time and say, remember when you did this, or remember when you did that? And it's probably a little disappointing to them sometimes. They're like, oh man, he doesn't have that instant recall of what he did, you know, on January 19th, 1984 or whatever. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. No, I have to agree with you.
Now, Uwe, when that season was over, I think it was 84, you were a member of the German Olympic team, correct?
Yes. You know, that was in 84.
And those were the Olympics in Los Angeles. So at some point, I know in the Olympics, you played Team USA. So
I mean, go ahead.
I just wondered, how did that, you know, obviously people you'd faced off against and played against, but, you know, Steve Alford, your teammate, was on that team. How unique was that, getting to play against Team USA in the Olympics?
Obviously it was unique, just starting with the fact, like you mentioned, Steve Alford, Bobby Knight. Obviously the United States team was incredibly good. And so that was different. You know, and it was definitely exciting to play against them. Keep in mind, the same thing happened to me in the '92 Olympics. You know, pros were all of a sudden allowed, and once again, we played against the Americans there too. Now, you're right, there wasn't a Bobby Knight on the team, but nevertheless, we got our butt kicked anyway. Obviously, it was the dream team, and they kicked everybody's butt.
They were called the dream team for a reason. And I know my daughter, who's a sophomore at Indiana, was at a game, one of their games recently, and she sent me a picture because they have in one of the lobbies a placard of Olympians from each Olympic who were Indiana athletes who played, and she sent me a picture of the placard that lists Coach Knight, obviously Steve Alford, and then yourself for the '84. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember watching you play in that. So you wrap up your senior season. You get drafted first round by the Dallas Mavericks. So how was that process? I mean, the draft back then wasn't like it is now with TV coverage and everything. I mean, how did you know you were getting drafted?
Well, like you said yourself, it was different back then. Actually, as it turned out, every year in the summers I played for the German team, and you know, there's always something going on. You know, like the Olympics require qualifications. The Olympics require that you play in the European Championship. You know, those kinds of the World Championship. You know, those kinds of things. So you play every year, and that year we were playing somewhere, and we were practicing, of course, constantly. And I just remember Detlef Schrempf was on my team, on the German team back then, and the coach came up to us and he basically told us, hey, listen, you guys got drafted here and there. And I said, oh, that's cool. You know, I mean, before I went over there, I knew I was going to get drafted, but, you know, the position didn't mean that much for me at that point. And I knew Detlef was a better player than I was, so he was drafted higher. That made perfect sense. So, you know, we celebrated a little bit, but yeah, you're right. It wasn't that big of a deal back then.
So you start your NBA journey, Dallas Mavericks. How different did you find the NBA game to the college game at that point?
Well, obviously, the biggest difference was I didn't play. And, I was a backup player. And so, you know, and the level, of course, is so much different. Like my practice opponent was James Donaldson. I mean, he was my height, but had 100 pounds on me. And these were not fat pounds. These were, these were muscle pounds.
Yep.
So it was not the same level. Once again, since I was a backup player, that changed the mentality too. You know, you didn't have as much pressure as the other players. You played with different players because typically, you know, they put in the backup players all at the same time, and obviously for much less minutes. So yeah, it was definitely different than at the university level, that's for sure.
And I know you played for the Mavericks, Golden State, and San Antonio. Were those the three teams you played with over your career?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And I think you, in our conversation, at some point, you went back in at San Antonio and were brought in again as the backup, the practice player, against a young David Robinson. Was that? He was quite an athlete.
Yeah, he definitely was. He brought a different level, and he introduced to me almost a different level of game. Nowadays, that's common. And, you know, that's the alley-oop, you know, and you play so differently against that kind of play, which I wasn't used to. So in practice, you know, the ball's on the opposite side of him. You scoot over to possibly help when they drive. And as soon as you scoot over, he's wide open behind you for the alley-oop, but you have no chance. And so it was definitely an adjustment to play against him because he brought a different level of game to the NBA back then.
And, you know, I think one of the things you talked about when you guys traveled, he was really into computers, laptops, some things like that, which I know you were. And you found him to be pretty interesting along those lines.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure he brought computers on the plane and stuff, but he always, the books he read, the things he was interested in, you know, I mean, I think one time on the plane, I'm talking to him, he's sitting decently close, and he's reading a physics book. You know, that's pretty different.
Yeah, that's different on a plane full of NBA players.
Right.
So, you know, going from being such a big contributor on your college team to then having, you know, to adjust to a different role in the pros, I mean, mentally, is that a how difficult is that to do, or do you realize that that's the, you know, you're getting paid, you're a pro, you got to do what you got to do? Like, where are you at in your head a lot of times when you're making that adjustment to what your place on the team is?
Well, keep in mind, the biggest thing that helps you mentally is the fact that you realize full well that whoever is playing ahead of you is better than you. So, I mean, like I described, James Donaldson, you know, back then, of course, centers had a different role than nowadays. And so even though maybe he was less mobile than I was because of his size, he was much more effective. And when you know that, then, you know, you understand the place that you're on. I've been on other teams before where I was in similar places. And so, you know, that's just the way it is.
Another person I know, Uwe, I think you talked about playing with primarily internationally. Wasn't that Sabonis of the Soviet Union?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Soviet Union at first and then Ukraine. No, what am I saying?
Lithuania.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about him is he was always my nemesis. I mean, we're talking the first game I ever played when I was 15 kind of idea. I mean, obviously I didn't play against him back then, but not when I was 15. But I think when I was 17, I already played against him because he was the same model year as I was, born 62. And so in Europe, I think even in this country, you play at the same level as your age. And so I constantly, always, every year played against that guy. So yeah, I knew him pretty well.
He was a pretty good player.
Oh, he was incredible. I mean, in my opinion, he was better than, you know, we talked about Robinson earlier and those kinds of players. He brought a different level to the game because of his passing and his calmness on the floor. You know, nothing could rattle him. And so, yeah, he was an incredible player.
Uwe, I know from your college days, I know you still talk to Dan Dockich. I know I've heard you on Dan's podcast. Any other college teammates you're close to or talk to on occasion?
No, we've got a text group going with Dan that Dan initiated, and Steve Alford is on there, you know, so through that maybe, but otherwise, no, not really. I don't really talk to many of them. And the funny thing is, people ask me the same thing about my NBA players. It's bad, you know, it's bad on my part, I have to admit, but no, I've never kept in touch much with those guys, and I still don't have much contact with them.
Yeah. Do you ever go, you know, get the urge, hey, we're in Dallas, let's go watch a Mavericks game? Or you ever do anything like that at all?
Yeah, I mean, when I get tickets, I go places. I mean, maybe not the Mavericks, but the Spurs, because they're closer to where I'm at,
Okay.
in Austin here. But matter of fact, I've never been to a Mavericks game, you know, except as a player. So, yeah, I'd like to one day. And I think Brad Davis is still around. And if I ever was to do that, I would try to look him up. he was a good friend of mine on the Mavericks. And so I'd look him up, but that's unfortunately, no, I never got to see a Mavericks game really.
Just like in terms of even watching on TV, is that something that interests you much, or is it just not the same to follow the game, as a spectator as it is a player? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it just kind of boring to watch it on TV when you're not participating, or are you just kind of basketballed out at this point in your life? Like, where are you at on that? Do you follow the game at all at the pro or college level?
Yeah, definitely. What makes the game, and really that comes with every sport, what makes the game so interesting to watch, even definitely for myself, is the level of play changes all the time. I mean, you see that in football, you see that, heck, in golf, you see that everywhere. And obviously in the NBA, the level of play has changed dramatically, and therefore the type of game has changed. So, yeah, I really like to watch NBA. I like the fact that there's a lot of foreigners now and that they really compete at a high level. And so, yeah, maybe it bugs me a little bit that all they do is shoot threes. There's much less of a team game now. It's more individual, but the skill level is just something that you can definitely admire.
So you're not one of these guys that it sounds like, as far as the technical aspects, maybe some things about the modern game you don't enjoy as much, but you hear some people say, well, the players just aren't as good now as they used to be. And I always feel like that's kind of people just living in whatever glory years they happen to have in their mind. But you sound like you understand or believe that the athletes in the modern game just keep taking another step.
Oh, they definitely do. I can pretty much 100% guarantee you, and I told Docky this too, at this point, I would never make the NBA. I mean, heck, at this point, I would probably be a medium to maybe a backup center kind of player, on a college team with my skill level, my size, that kind of stuff. There's just so many, just like what I said about James Donaldson. I know he was better than I was. I watch those players now, like I said, even at the university level, they're just better than I was. It's just the way it is.
Do you attribute that to just the way the game is played at the younger levels, or is it just people changing in general? Just athletes just keep getting better? Is there an explanation for that, or is that just the way it is?
I think they start at an earlier level. Mm-hmm. And it may also have something to do that coaching and physical therapy and the physical pieces are so much more advanced nowadays that I saw it with my daughter. My daughter played volleyball, and what these coaches do, Bobby and I couldn't care less what we ate. Every game we had like 4 or 5 hours before the game, we had pre-game meal. We're talking steak and baked potatoes. We're talking major league food. And, nowadays it's all scientifically set up. This is for all the players. And, and that starts at early age. Like I said, nowadays starts at much earlier age. And then if you also add that scientific advancement to the practice and to everything, yeah, the players get better.
It's that bigger, faster, stronger mentality, and you do see that.
Definitely.
Dustin, you have anything else for we've kept him awful long today.
Yeah, I don't want to overstep here.
Well, but one thing I do want to mention, one thing people probably don't realize, Uwe is a part-time chicken farmer.
That is a true statement. Yeah. And sometimes it's full-time. Now, it's never full-time, I have to admit. My wife takes care of them mostly. But, yeah, we got chickens. I'm very fortunate. I live in the middle of nowhere. And I got some land and I got a good view, and we don't have any other agricultural stuff, but we enjoy the chickens and we definitely enjoy the eggs.
Hey, when you live out in the middle of nowhere, you can raise chickens and burn furniture. Two things Uwe's good at.
Yes.
He can thank his friend Dan Dockage for part of that notoriety.
Yeah, you're right. That was maybe a mistake to send him that picture.
Well, Uwe, I'll tell you what. I've greatly enjoyed our visit. And next time you get a chance to head back this way, we have to get together again. I know it's not often, but like I said, it was a good time, and this area valued what you brought. It was different, but you're very fondly remembered. I know, as you found out well as we were at the football game. Everybody wanted to come out and get a picture with you on the sideline. They weren't asking me or Teddy Gravenhorse for a picture. They were asking you.
Yeah, I mean, I see that now, and I really appreciate it. And I hope everybody knows that in Effingham, that, it makes you feel good.
It was. You were a special part of a special era. How's that?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
All righty.
Well, Uwe,
Justin, do you have anything?
I don't think so. We've got some local high school basketball stuff to talk about, Mike. I think we can give Uwe the opportunity to jump off. I'm guessing he doesn't have much to say about the local high school basketball scene, but we do appreciate you taking the time, and I really enjoyed it. I've heard a lot about you. Never had a chance to talk to you, obviously, and so this has been a real treat for me. And again, thanks so much.
No problem, guys. It was fun.
Keep checking your porch for that frozen treat. You never know when they deliver.
Good point. Yeah, if they deliver and if it's still frozen, man, you got my admiration, I have to say.
All right.
I appreciate it, dude. You have a good one. Have a good Christmas.
Yeah, you did too. Thanks.
All righty. Thank you.
All right. So that's Uwe Blab. Thanks so much to him for taking the time to jump on with us. We'll let him take a moment to disconnect from the call. And Mike, you and I have a little bit of business to take care of. We've been going for a while now, so we won't go as deep into the prep scene as we did last week. I think every once in a while, we'll get a real deep dive in. But if we've got a guest, and
it was a thin week. Effingham boys didn't play. The girls played once.
The girls played. The girls ended up playing. So they had a game against Taylorville on Tuesday night, and they won that one. Effingham's girls are undefeated.
Yeah, I saw that score.
They're 7-0. They've won their only Apollo game. They played Taylorville on Tuesday. They did not have a conference game the rest of the week. They played North Clay on Saturday and beat them by 18 points. Looked like they gave a couple of kids a day off on that game as well. But the Lady Hearts 7-0, 1-0 in the conference. The Apollo Conference on the girls' side, there's some strong showings so far. The Mahomet Seymour girls haven't lost yet either. They beat Mount Zion by 59 points in their conference opener. And Mattoon, the Mattoon girls are 5-1. And the thing that's notable about that is that we knew Lincoln was going to be a pretty good team, and Mattoon has played them 3 times already through because they were both at the same tournament, and they played once and then ended up facing each other again, split there. But then Mattoon played Lincoln again in their conference opener on Friday night and beat them by 30, 61-31. So the Mattoon girls are obviously good. So
when you see that margin, I just wonder if the Frobe girl played when there's that margin. I mean,
Yeah.
they're good clubs. I mean, Mattoon's, I think Ramage is the young lady's name. I saw her last year at Effingham. Nice player. I think she's signed to go to UIC maybe. She's signed D1 in the Chicagoland area.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
I mean,
yeah, that's impressive.
At any rate, you're looking at an Apollo conference that I think, because the Taylorville girls are pretty solid too. So I really think it looks like Mount Zion and obviously Charleston are down this year. But other than that, those other
So
five teams,
four horse race.
I mean, I think four or five. I think that there's five teams, they play each other. You don't know how it's going to turn out. That's pretty much the bottom line. Like a lot of conferences, in a lot of years, you just have one or two teams at the top where you pretty much know that it's going to come down to the games they play against each other. And that's not the deal this year.
Right. But you mentioned strength, because I was getting scores for when we seed our Christmas tournament, but at the Paris Thanksgiving tournament, Mount Zion's boys beat Charleston's boys by 20 points. Okay. They turn around at regular season and Charleston beats Mount Zion by 20 points at Mount Zion.
Yeah, that's Mount Zion had been 4-0 before they started playing conference boys games, and they've dropped a couple. They've lost to Charleston. They also got beat by Lincoln on Saturday. Lincoln's boys are undefeated. Effingham, you don't know how they fit into that yet because they were supposed to play a conference game against Taylorville last week, and that one,
right?
We mentioned last week that Taylorville had some issues with COVID, couldn't play their games against Effingham and Charleston this week. I know the Effingham game's been rescheduled somewhere down the road. I don't have it off the top of my head, but they're gonna get that one made up. But Effingham, as a result, they didn't play. They didn't play this week, so they're still sitting at the 2-2 that they had at the St. Anthony Thanksgiving tournament, and they're going to get thrown in the fire this week though, because they're going to play Mattoon tomorrow night, Tuesday night, and then they've got Mahomet Seymour on Friday. Those are both road games, and those are both teams that look to be a handful. Mattoon's already beaten them once.
Yeah, Mattoon beat Mahomet at Mahomet.
Yeah, Mattoon went to Mahomet and won a low-scoring game, 35-33. I mean, I think the Apollo boys side is very similar to the girls side in that there are not going to be a lot of predetermined outcomes. Lincoln is obviously good; they haven't lost yet. Mattoon looks to be pretty solid. Charleston looks to be having an up year, and Mahomet, you just kind of know year in and year out that it's no pun intended, a dogfight with them because they've always got athletes.
Right.
Basketball still is up and down a little bit, but they're always going to be a big physical team, and that's tough to deal with. I think the Apollo, obviously Lincoln, and this was Lincoln's last year, correct? That's my understanding. Yes.
Right. I mean, they're kind of I guess they're going to be considered the cream of the crop. But yeah, it should be interesting. And it's, there's a lot of that. Now, wait a minute. We beat you, but you beat them and they beat us. I think you're going to see a lot of that.
I think that
triangle of trying to figure out who's better than each other. So,
well, and also when the final conference standings come to pass, you'll have to be looking up what the tiebreakers are as far as who beat who to figure out, who actually finished third and fourth and all that. So that'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, and Bulldogs had 2 wins this week. I think they beat North Clay and Sullivan, correct?
Yeah, the St. Anthony boys. I was at their game against North Clay on Tuesday night. That was their conference opener, and they won that one by 8 points, 55-47. That final score, that game was 22-4 early on.
Yeah, I saw that score early. It was, and I thought, was it 20 to? It wasn't 20-0, was it? At one point to start the game,
it wasn't quite that lopsided.
The margin surprised me early.
Yeah, North Clay put on a good run in the fourth quarter, because even in the fourth quarter, St. Anthony had a, 14, 16-point lead. North Clay put on a little run. They actually had another shot to make it even closer and couldn't get it to go. They were playing, their coach, Coach Zink, was not there that game also. He was kept away by an illness and wasn't on hand, but they put on a little run at the end just to, they lost another game to KZ Westfield by 3 points on Friday night. So North Clay's they're 1-4 on the season.
A lot of close games. But
they've played, and they've really got a challenging schedule, because they play Newton and Altamont, they play Newton and St. Elmo Brownstown this week, and they've got a Fairfield tonight. They've got a non-conference game with Fairfield tonight. That's not going to be easy either. So they're really challenging themselves with their non-conference schedule. Their record is not going to, for a while, I don't think, going to reflect how tough they are to deal with. But St. Anthony, they handled Sullivan on Friday night. They beat the crap out of Sullivan. Sullivan looks to be a little down. They lost by 24 points to Windsor Stew Straws earlier this week too. So, but the good thing for St. Anthony is that they're winning some games and getting on, getting in some rhythm, and probably figuring out a little bit about, who they're going to need to be leaning on, and who the contributions are going to come from.
Right. And that Sullivan game, my wife had gone for the first half for the coronation and the homecoming and all this. And she came home and she said, they were up by almost 30. Well, later, a service I used to get scores online actually showed originally Sullivan winning 69-63. And I'm like, wait a minute. They were down 30 at the half. I said, were their kids not playing for Sullivan? And, maybe they had some kids out for discipline. And no. She goes, it couldn't have been that close. There's no way. So she said, the evaluator of talent, she convinced me that the website was wrong. And an hour later it was, when I saw they won by 40-some points. So
yeah, I think what you're finding out for St. Anthony is that Stewart and Croy are establishing themselves as the leading scorers. They're both right around 12 points a game. Stewart closer to 13, but he scored 22 against Sullivan. He's been in double figures, 5 out of the 6 games, and Croy has been in double figures 4 out of the 6 games. So, you're finding out that you can, kind of who you can lean on, the contributions. Otherwise, there's different guys that are coming up different nights. But I think what you need to have as a team, you need to know the couple of guys that you can sort of in the big moment, who you can lean on, but also a couple of those secondary contributors that will make a shot, when the other team is taking your top guys away from you. And those are just, again, you can't play a week's worth of games in the Thanksgiving tournament and have answers to all those questions. And so
that's almost an advantage Effingham had. I know they lost a game because of schedule and you want to play, but it's almost like, okay, we've got a sample. Now we know kind of some things we need to work on. Granted, a week seems long, maybe if you'd played Friday and had off till Friday, but now let's see now moving forward how Effingham addresses some things from that. So it'll be interesting. And I think T-Town's their only game was Tolono, right?
Yeah, the boys played Tolono Unity, beat them 59-51 Saturday night. So they're 4-1 overall. Again, they didn't play much. They had a week off from games after the Thanksgiving tournament. The T-Town, they pick it back up, normal schedule this week. They've got Paris and Bloomington Central Catholic this week, Tuesday and Friday night.
That's the homecoming game, Bloomington Central Catholic. So.
Yeah, I'll be there with Greg Friday night. There'll be
a lot of people there.
I would think so. That's one of those. Well, pretty much any game at T-Town, you're always glad that they've got that spot for the radio station marked off, because otherwise you'd have a little tough time squeezing in.
And now they can control the temperature in the gym better, Dustin.
Is that right?
I don't think the days of 95 degrees, I think those are lost.
Well, it's just one less thing for me to talk about on the air, though. If there's ever a moment that you need to fill some air, you can always just say, man, it is hot in here. It's JH Griffin Gym, and it is hot in here. But the T-Town girls also, they had a week off, and they'll get back at it with a couple of road games this week. They've got Pana tonight, which that'll be a tough one. That's Pana's always a tough place to go play, year in and year out. Well coached, all that's good stuff. And then they've got a road game with St. Joseph Ogden on Thursday night. I can't tell you anything about that, but
they're going to have athletes.
Yeah,
they're going to have athletes.
The T-Town's girls 4-1 as well as the boys. Let's go National Trail, which will also let us segue into our Atta Boy of the week. Don't think we forgot. I should have said something at the open of the show. Need to do a better job of teasing things that are going to be at the end of the show, at the beginning of the show. So,
see, I don't get to talk at the opening of the show.
Well, maybe you should. Maybe you should. I mean, listen, I'm open to it. The National Trail girls, actually, I'll do this. We'll talk a little more National Trail boys, and then we'll go National Trail girls,
right. And
that'll segue us neatly into our Atta Boy. But again, St. Anthony, they've got a couple of NTC games this week. They've got CHBC, Cadden Herrick Beecher City coming in tomorrow night, Tuesday, and then they go to St. Elmo Brownstown on Friday. And those are two teams that have had some early season success. CHBC is 4-2. They did lose their conference opener to Neoga on Tuesday night. And then St. Elmo Brownstown, they're 6-1 on the season. They beat Neoga in overtime on Friday and lost a conference game to South Central earlier in the week. So they're 1-1 in league play. I will just say that I think both of those teams, from what I am seeing, look pretty solid and look to be a handful and look to be part of what I think the NTC is another one of those leagues where I think there's going to be a lot of those dogfight games. I don't think there are too many teams that you can just peg for the bottom of the conference. And I'm not going to even get into naming names there, but what I do think is that there's just a muddle of teams that could beat anybody on any given night. St. Elmo Brownstown and CHBC have both gotten a lot of scoring contributions from a lot of different guys, which always makes a team tougher to play, right? When you don't know the one you can shut down. So I think St. Anthony is going to have one of those weeks where they're going to, get a handful, but if they play well, they can get a couple of wins, but it's not going to be easy. And then I just think there's interesting NTC games all around. Neoga and Diederich on Tuesday night. Diederich has had they seems like they've had a pretty good opening to their season. Neoga has been pretty solid early on. Altamont, they've got Newton tonight, and that'll be interesting. Or Newton tomorrow night, that'll be interesting. Altamont has a loss. Altamont, and then they've got South Central in a conference game Friday night. South Central's had some good early season success. Really, you look at the NTC early on, and they've only all played 6 or 7 games, but there's only one team that doesn't have an even or better record. They're all 500 or better, and North Clay's the one. And we just talked about who they've played. They've had to play some tough teams. So I think this is that's going to be an interesting conference to watch.
Well, and this week, with Cadden Herrick, Beecher City, and then St. Elmo Brownstown, this is a week St. Anthony, okay, we lost our first 3 at Thanksgiving. Now we've won 3 in a row. Are we going to be contending for an NTC title, or are we going to, just keep being a work in progress? So this week is kind of a big week for them. I mean, you get 2 more conference wins, and all of a sudden, wow, we're now here. And again, both schools are playing, have got off the good start. So good test for the Bulldogs this week. It'll be interesting to see how those games go. And, I know the Altamont Newton game, that's going to be interesting. Newton's got off to a decent start. I think their losses are
They lost
Salem maybe and Mount Zion.
Yeah, they lost to Salem. They beat Casey in the championship of the.
Casey had a kid transfer though. I thought they were going to be really strong, and I think they've had a kid transfer out.
And then let's see, Newton also. I'm scrolling down here.
I think it was Mount Zion at the Turkey tournament.
Yeah.
No, I take that back.
Yeah, they weren't in the same. They weren't in the same.
No, they weren't in the same tournament
as Mount Zion. So Newton. I'm looking at Newton. They're 4-1. They've only lost.
Yeah, Salem's their only loss. Yep. Okay, and that was at Salem.
Salem is. I think Salem from afar seems like a team that give people fits as well. So
I think they're right around 500. So
let's shift gears to the NTC girls. I think tonight's a big night for the NTC conference and the girls side. Altamont's going to St. Anthony tonight, and both of those teams are off to really good starts. I saw St. Anthony play against Windsor Stew Straws last week, and they've got a lot of – St. Anthony's good, okay?
Are you doing that game on the radio tonight?
Tonight, I am not on the radio tonight.
Are Matt and Greg doing that game tonight?
Yeah, they're gonna be on that one, I believe.
Okay.
I've got I'm going to Mattoon tomorrow night for the Effingham boys game, and then I've got the T-Town boys game on Friday night. Those are the two I'm doing.
Okay.
Yeah, but Altamont at St. Anthony. St. Anthony's 2-0 in the conference. Altamont's 2-0 in the conference. They're both 6-2 overall. Altamont, they've got a standout player in Grace Nelson. She has put up some ridiculous scoring numbers so far.
Right. I did actually work with Matt over there last week, Thursday night, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
She was really quiet in the first half. And then in the third quarter, she went on an 8-0 run herself to start the third quarter. And what was a game of maybe 3-4 points at the half, all of a sudden she opened it up to 11 or 12.
Yep.
And she got 4 points. She just got a rebound and took off down the middle of the floor and beat everybody the other end for a layup. It was a game that Dietrich was bigger than Altamont size-wise and just couldn't finish in that 4-foot radius, especially on some offensive rebound opportunities. I, at one time, thought Dietrich really, if they could have finished inside 4 feet, could have won that ball game.
And Nelson's that kind of player too. You mentioned her getting a rebound, just busting it down the floor. She's physical enough that she can compete with a taller player. She can go in and get a rebound, but she's obviously talented enough to bring it up the floor. She's averaging 30.5 points a game in 8 games this season, and her low output is 22. She's scored as many as 42. That was in their season opener against Vandalia. But she's always she's pretty much right around 30. I mean, I'm seeing 37, 29, 28, 31, 28, 27. She's just very consistent, very good. And Altamont, from my understanding, plays a very guard-oriented style play. They don't really have any bigs. But St. Anthony does. St. Anthony has got
that's where I think St. Anthony will give them a lot of fits if St. Anthony can finish.
Well, that's the name I want to bring into it with that Altamont St. Anthony matchup tonight, is that Lucy Fearday against Windsor Stew Straws had a double-double. She had 20 points, 11, 12 rebounds. And that was coming off the bench because she'd been ill earlier in the week and didn't play in an earlier game, and they didn't start her, but she came in pretty quick. And she owned the game in the paint. She's got some length to her, obviously. But you talk about finishing, she got up to the basket and put strong looks up. And I think they're going to, I think if they win that one, they're going to get a big outing from her. But then also, Riley Guy has been outstanding for the Lady Bulldogs early on this season. Fearday is averaging 16 points a game. She's not quite the team leader because Riley Guy is at 16.1 points a game, and she's been especially strong lately. Her last 3 games, she scored 30, 22, and 16.
Yeah,
And
she got off her first game of the year. She had like 4 points, 6 points, 4.
Yep, she had 4 against Diederich, 5 against Marshall, 22 against Sandoval. But yeah, she really has hit her stride in the last basically 4 ball games, and she's one of the seniors on this team, and she hit her first 2 points against Windsor Stew Straws Thursday night, put her at 1,000 for her career, and that is that's an accomplishment that really means something, especially when you look at the fact that they didn't get to play a full schedule of games last season. She didn't get the full 28, 30 game schedule, whatever you get to play. And she's still been able to, with a lot of room to spare, been able to get up there. So
in essence, she's done that in 3 seasons. If you take what she's done this year, add it to last year, roughly a season, give or take.
Yeah. I mean, that game, I do want to give a shout out to Izzy Hackman. She was, when we were covering that game, Matt and I did that game, and it actually, the Windsor Stew Straws game, that one ended at the Enlow Center with 6 minutes and 15 seconds left on the 4th quarter clock because Izzy took a spill. She went up for a shot. Hatchett's player attempted to block it. She got knocked down on the floor. At first, it looked like she just landed on her rear end and maybe, you hit your tailbone. That hurts. It takes a minute to get up from that. But it kind of became evident quickly that something more serious was bothering her. And she ended up, leaving the court on a stretcher, and they stopped the game at a certain point. They just realized it was a pretty lopsided score, and they just decided not to finish it.
Well, yeah, there's sometimes something like that. That's tough to go back when you have to bring a stretcher onto the floor. Now, are any kids in the gym even going to be thinking about what's going on during the game?
Yeah, that's a tough situation. It's I think emotionally, nobody wants. It's a sticky spot. Trying to finish that game at that point, because do you feel like maybe you're not doing the right thing, and plus, again, kids are watching their friend in obvious pain, and at that point they didn't know what was going on with Izzy. It sounds to me like she avoided any sort of, at first I was like, there must be some broken bone or something involved here, because as long as it's taken her to get up, something's got to be seriously wrong. Now later on, the radio station on their website reported back spasms were what were bothering her, and so tough thing to deal with. Hopefully they'll get her back, but yeah, I know you've got some experience. Back injuries can linger and cause you a lot of misery.
No fun. The word spasm should be.
It doesn't do it justice, does it?
It should be a 4-letter word.
So that kind of cast a bit of a shadow over Riley Guy's night, but I think I'm sure this right here is going to just.
Oh, this will lift her.
Yeah, this what we're about to do is going to it's not going to make her forget that her friend got hurt in the game, but I think it's going to do a lot to it's kind of a balm for that wound. So I think with that said, Riley Guy is going to be our Atta Boy of the week. So I don't know. Could you hear that?
Barely. We're gonna have to find a louder version.
Well, part of it's the app that my computer's opening it with. So why don't we try again?
There you go. Much better.
So we'll get this right at a certain point. But yeah, Riley Guy, senior leader on the St. Anthony girls basketball team, eclipsed 1,000 points this week. She's been a good player for them for years now, and has really stepped it up, helped get them off to a great start. So she's going to be our Atta Boy of the week. That again, we should mention who's sponsoring that. Mike, go right ahead.
Yeah, that's Joe's Pizza this week, but we're alternating each week. It's a gift card from Joe's Pizza or Pizza Man. Last week we had Pizza Man Brendan Nieberge was our inaugural winner. And that picture we put on our website, if you look close, I think he's tearing up a little bit. I think there were tears in his eyes. So you got to really blow it up to look closely. Or maybe it was the wind. we were outside for that.
I was just going to say he's standing next to you in the picture. So,
that could be another reason.
But congratulations to Riley, guys. She's a fun player to watch. She has been for a while, and very deserving. Very deserving.
She ran cross country and track with my daughter when she was a freshman and a sophomore, or freshman. So I got to see her. Great kid. I've been told I have to smile in the next picture. I guess they probably took that picture too quick for me to be prepared when we got Brendan. So I'll work on that. I'll get that gift certificate, and we'll get that to Riley this week, and we'll get that picture out on our, get it out on our webpage.
All right. Well, with that, I think we've taken up enough of everybody's time this week. We will be working on a guest for next week's show. We've got something in the works. We're not 100% sure on it yet, but at any rate,
haven't had confirmation yet.
We'll have plenty of basketball to talk about. So again, if you're watching, thanks for watching. Make sure you share this. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It costs you nothing to do that. But we're climbing slowly but steadily on our YouTube subscribers.
Well, Lucky 13, and Uwe is a guest. We put that teaser. I put that teaser out there on social media that our guest this week was a tall redhead. I had some guesses.
Yep.
A friend, Steve Finolio, one of our former guests, asked what other tall redhead I knew, and I said, "Well, Carrot Top," but no, it wasn't.
But again, thanks to Uwe for joining us. Thanks to everybody for checking this out, and we will be recording again next week. So until then, Mike, have a great week. We'll see you around.
Hey, bud.
All right, later.